further ado, Chijoke, let's see if we can get a hold of our next guest and who will be joining us via the phone call to look at our concluding issues in the news.
Well, certainly, let's join Mr. Segun Olatunji, the executive editor and at the Daily News Hub, joining from Lagos. Hello, a warm morning to you, Mr. Segun. It's wonderful to have you join us this morning on Morning Express.
Good morning, gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be here this morning.
All right.
Now, let's get into the issue. We just concluded with Segun, who talked about one of the ceremonial rites most governors have now made part of their inauguration, which is in granting pardons to inmates. This morning on one of our newspapers, The Guardian, it talks about how much of a congestion we have in correctional centers, with the Minister of Interior also looking at possibly relocating the correctional centers we have in the country, and the fact that since the 1960s, a lot of them have not had any infrastructural upgrade. What do you make of this developing story as it concerns national security?
Oh, well, thank you. Yes. Decongesting the various correctional centers, I think, it's very, very important and it's very necessary, especially at this point in time, because most of them, they have been for years, they've been so congested that, you can't imagine the kind of inhuman situation that, people in those facilities, that they are put through on a daily basis. So they are human beings. They may have been convicted or they may be awaiting trial, but they are human beings, and so they also deserve, to be given a decent environment, for them to live while, their conviction, while they serve their conviction or while they await trial. So it's very important that the government of the day should, address now.
Well, in terms of pretrial detainees across the country, the number is pegged at a staggering 53,225 who are currently languishing in jail. Now, the entire figure of individuals that are currently detained across correctional centers in our nation is a little over 80,000. And yet we have about 53,000 still awaiting trial. And many of these individuals have stayed in prison for far longer than the stipulated jail term should they be convicted. How do we also address this very pertinent issue of delaying justice within our judicial system?
Well, I think this is where the judiciary, comes in. The judiciary in Nigeria should, I think it also needs, that arm also needs some reform, so that people are not necessarily or unnecessarily, people are not necessarily detained, for offenses. It takes a lot of time. Trial in court in Nigeria takes, sometimes eternity, and which should not be, for offenses that, you can imagine somebody awaiting trial for 10, 15, 20 years, for an offense that will not, that carries maybe 2 or 3 years sentence. So, usually in this matter now, they have a lot to do in helping to decongest, our prisons, because sometimes, some of these detainees, they are not supposed to be sent to the correctional centers for detention. Their matters are supposed to be dealt with, there and then, rather than, it's like our judges, our courts, they have found them, they seem to be so comfortable with, sending people to detention facilities, to await trial. And so, in fact, in most of the cases, most of them, nobody even knows, the stages at which their various cases are anymore. Most of them, the files are lost. When you go there, they tell you they can't even find their files. They can't even remember, why they were sent to that correctional facility. So it behoves on the judiciary in this country to really sit up and help, to decongest our various detention facilities.
Now, let's also look at this issue because I don't know if you recall when the Nigerian Correctional Service came under scrutiny when they talked about how much was used to feed inmates as against feeding the dogs in the correctional centers. Now, a staggering
Yeah.
21 billion naira has been pegged as the amount that has been used to feed those on awaiting trial under the period under review. I don't know what you make of this development.
Well, that's why that's
I see you laughing
the
as well
so-called.
before you make your statement. Is it laughable that 21 billion naira was used to feed 53,000 awaiting trial inmates under this period under review?
Well, I just wanted to say, that's why the so-called humongous, billions of naira allocated for, feeding the detainees. I think if you visit that place, you'll be shocked, by what the kind of food these people get. One cannot really call those things food, because they can, that amount is, in the real sense of the word, is meager. Is meager. Considering the large number of detainees in our detention facilities, in our correctional facilities across the country, that amount is too meager. It's still too meager. The best that the only thing that we can do, that the government can do, and the judiciary, is to expedite action on, decongesting the various correctional facilities, so that, whatever is allocated will be a bit, okay for those who necessarily should be at the various correctional facilities, awaiting trial, or those who have been convicted.
There have been debates about this push and desperate calls for certain politicians who have either siphoned government funds or done one wrong or the other in the country and are currently serving jail term to be pardoned, as opposed to other individuals who might have committed lesser crimes or have stolen lesser amounts of money. How do we create this balance? There seems to be so much aggression towards this continued plea for pardon for politicians in the country across our correctional centers in the nation.
Well, the more we hanker after or talk about the issue of pardoning politicians who have stolen or who have committed one crime or the other against the state, the more we are not helping the situation. We are not helping the Nigerian state, because politicians are not more human beings. They are not more human beings than the rest of us, the ordinary citizens. Nigeria is a country that is governed by laws, and our laws should be applied to the letter. Whoever has committed any crime should also serve the punishment for those crimes. Politicians, they are not special human beings. They are like the rest of us. In fact, many of them started like the rest of us, ordinary citizens, that due to their involvement in politics, they became and then they became what they are, and then they start seeing themselves as special Nigerians or privileged Nigerians. There shouldn't be any discriminatory form of punishment in this country, because that situation, considering to that kind of a system or situation will not help the Nigerian state, because number one, the politicians, who are prone to committing crimes, especially financial, will not be deterred. When you pardon them, they will not be deterred. That means you are encouraging many more of them, to keep committing crimes in various ways, and then in that wise destroying the Nigerian nation itself. So there shouldn't be any form of concession, given to any politician, whichever politician has committed any crime or has done anything, and is now convicted and sentenced. and is serving his term should be allowed to serve his term fully. You know, this is when you know, the others, you know, will be deterred from committing same crime in future.
Well, Mr. Segun, let me refresh your memory now, and let's see if we can go back to the Guardian newspaper. There are certain figures that I would want to read out and also get your honest reaction to it. The Guardian newspaper comes up now. We take a look at how much it costs per day to feed inmates across our correctional facilities, and in 2025, how much it will also cost to feed pre-trial inmates in the country. Now, at 1,125 naira per inmate daily, the federal government is set to spend 21.8 billion naira to feed pre-trial inmates in 2025. Now, in Port Harcourt, there are 1,810 pre-trial inmates. In Enugu, 2,290 pre-trial inmates. In Kuje, 767. In Suleja, 190. And in Lagos, a staggering 6,629 inmates awaiting trial. Yet we see the federal government earmarking about 21 billion naira for feeding them. Couldn't these funds have been channeled towards ensuring that the method or the speed of justice is expedited to, you know, for these inmates to face trial, serve their jail term, and then just be on their way? Do we say that this is penny wise, pound foolish from the part of the federal government?
Of course, it's an unwise thing, I would say, you know, for the government to, you know, allocate this kind of, this staggering amount to feeding pretrial inmates, because despite, you know, this staggering amount, when you still go there, you'll be shocked. As I said earlier, you'll be shocked to see what they are being fed, what you know, those people are being fed with. You know, you can imagine saying, you know, you feed an inmate, a pretrial inmate, with 1,155 naira a day. What kind of meal can that provide for these people? What kind of meal? You know, let's just look at the situation in this country. Let's look at the price of food, the high price of food in the market. What kind of meal will 1,155 naira provide for an inmate? It's not even enough for that inmate to be fed in the morning alone, to be given breakfast. Not to talk of being given 3 square meals in a day. Square meal in quotes now. You know, so I think this kind of money, just as you said, should be channeled to, you know, expediting a reform of the judiciary, expediting the congestion of our various correctional facilities. You know, this is when it will be wise, you know, talking about allocating this staggering amount to the prison sector. No. So, I think...
Yeah, carry on. Your last point, please, Mr. Segun.
Yes, so I think the federal government should have a rethink, you know, about, you know, allocating money to the various correctional centers, because the effect for me is not being really felt by those who are in detention in those places. Go there and see how they look. I mean, talking about the detainees now, go there and see how haggard many of them look, you know. So that will tell you that, you know, that money is not really getting to them. There's a lot that the government needs to do.
Now, in closing, we have one more issue in the news we would like to discuss with you, and it's following said debts owed to tanker drivers and the Independent Marketers Association in Nigeria. They're also alleging harassment by certain government officials. The past few hours now, we hear that some states are also faced with some scarcity of diesel in that regard. They're threatening that if these issues are not resolved, that there will be large implications should they embark on an industrial action. I don't know if you've gathered word on this development. Is there any report on the Daily Hub in this regard? Can you give us insight as to what the angle to the story is under your publication?
Well, we have done several reports. What I would just say in this case is that the government should do the necessary things, regarding settling the debts owed these, tanker owners or, associations and all that. They should just do that because they know that, if anything touches that sector, the ripple effect is not always, palatable. So, and the government knows that, when anything happens to that sector, it is usually the ordinary Nigerians that will suffer, the consequences. So, you can imagine the level of dislocation that, the disruption in their operations or the suspension of the operations, will cause to the lives of almost every Nigerian. So the sector is such that the government should not joke with whatever that is due to them. So I believe that the government should make haste to settle whatever indebtedness to these people, so that
Olatunji, when we say the government, it might be largely vast. Ipman has actually named the NMDPR, saying that they are the ones who are owing these bridging claims accounting to over 100 billion naira. It's not the first time they have leveled these claims of owed debts, but the NMDPR has not replied it or said he was even looking into it in that instance. This 7-day ultimatum that has now been issued by Ipman and the tankers drivers, are you sure that the government of the day would keep with this ultimatum in clearing those debts?
Well, I think anyhow, they should find a way around, this issue, because we should all know that it's a very sensitive issue that will affect virtually everybody in this country and virtually all the sectors in Nigeria. So I think something should be done so that it doesn't degenerate to that level that these people will down tools and withdraw their services.
Well, we are already seeing signs of queues around filling stations in Nigeria, especially in the FCT here. Long staggering queues of vehicles queuing up to buy petrol from filling stations. This is not the first time, this is not the 100th time that Nigerians have had to face this sort of situation. But this time around, do you think that there might be a way out sooner than later so that Nigerians and motorists can go back to their normal lives and purchase fuel as they have always done?
Well, the point is that everything is in the hands of the regulators and the operators. The regulators and the associations or whatever you call them, everything is in their hands. Everything depends on how they are able to resolve the outstanding issues and how early they are able to do this. And I believe that in the interest of the Nigerian nation, they should not waste, time, arguing over issues that should not be argued over. To try and resolve this matter so that Nigerians will not suffer as we have usually experienced whenever there's any disruption in the supply of fuel.
Now, one other thing that just before we let you go, Mr. Segun, one other thing that Dangote Refinery had stated yesterday was that it had about 600 billion naira or 60 billion naira worth of PMS or worth of products for Nigerians, that it has more than enough to give out to Nigerians. Yet we are seeing 100 billion naira debts causing this particular issue. Now it's not about the fact that there isn't an availability of the product, but rather funds are not being properly remitted to these marketers?
Okay, I'm listening to you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This particular situation, Nigerians have always been used to petrol is not available, but this time around, petrol is available, but the marketers are threatening not to sell because NNPCL and every other agency that's supposed to be remitting monies to them are not doing so. Do you think that maybe this might also open up the market for Dangote Refinery to supply properly and also make things easier for both the marketers and motorists across the country?
Yes. The Dangote issue. Dangote is a private business concern, and so he is in a position to supply the needed fuel to the country. But it's a private concern. What we are saying is that those regulatory agencies should do their job. They should do their job so that Nigerians will not be made to suffer unnecessarily for what is available in this country. Fuel, I believe, has always been available, but it's just that sometimes, disagreement between the regulators and the operators, usually cause this problem that we always have, resulting in that we call fuel scarcity. So I believe that with Dangote, situation may not be, as bad as it used to be. But then, at the same time, the regulatory agencies should sit up, do their job, settle whatever they are supposed to settle, the lenders are supposed to settle to, the operators, so that Nigerians will not be put unnecessary, into unnecessary suffering again.
All right, Mr. Segun Olatunji, we must thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having this deliberative conversation with you.
Thank you. It's my